This week, Credit Suisse became the first bank in more than a decade to face criminal charges over helping Americans evade tax. With me is Scannell to discuss it. Cara, so is this another example of banks being able to buy their way out of trouble?
Well, it's starting to seem that way because the reaction on Credit Suisse's guilty plea as the bank holding company, not a subsidiary, has had very little ramifications as far as we can tell. We haven't heard of any clients leaving, any reduction in lending. The bank seems to be doing just fine. Some people do think it's a little bit of a symbolic victory for DOJ, since they are able to claim that this was the first guilty plea in a long time. But it really does kind of seem like it is potentially just the new cost of doing business.
The practical consequences for them, do they include some supervisory requirement?
As part of the settlement with the bank regulators, Credit Suisse will have a monitor in place, which is supposed to continue to review the illegal activity and come up with additional remedial measures. That is the only additional piece of it that we know of, and otherwise they will just operate as they've been operating.
And can you see any other banks changing the way they're operating presently? I know these charges were specific to tax evasion, but in anticipation of greater monitoring by the Department of Justice.
Well, what we have seen, because of the breadth of investigations from LIBOR, fixing of rates, to foreign bribery charges, to tax cases and sanctions cases, we have seen some banks beef up their compliance programs and reorganize them. JP Morgan, which has paid a lot of money in the past year of $20 billion to settle a range of issues, has tremendously changed their compliance program, brought in 1,000 new people. So we are seeing that to some extent. One of the issues with the Credit Suisse case and why DOJ insisted on a guilty plea was because they felt that actually their compliance was not good and that they had done a poor internal investigation. So yeah, I think it's a little case by case, but certain banks that have been hit really hard have gotten the message and have made changes.
And in the meantime, we're seeing an escalation of fines. Is there a limit to where the fines will go?
There doesn't seem to be a limit. It keeps going up and up and up. The Credit Suisse settlement, which was $2.6 billion, was so much more expensive than UBS's 2009 settlement of $780 million. BNP Paribas, which is under investigation for sanctions, is looking to pay between $3.5 billion, maybe $5 billion. HSBC, which settled similar charges but with another layer of money laundering allegations just a year and a half ago, paid $1.9 billion. So we definitely are seeing a trajectory of higher fines and stiffer penalties.
So does the Department of Justice have something to prove now under Eric Holder for the rest of his term?
Well, that's how this is being seen in the marketplace, and some people think that's why we haven't seen a big reaction to the Credit Suisse news. It's viewed more as a political play because Eric Holder has overseen the Justice Department during a Democratic administration, which has been viewed as being soft on the banks. No major bank has had any criminal charges as a result of the financial crisis. No top executive has gone to jail. Eric Holder has fought off criticism from lawmakers, from the public, about him being too soft, and he himself had even told Congress a year ago that some banks were too big to charge. So effectively, he's been on a campaign to show how he's going to be a lot tougher, and that is a lot of what people think is driving this, real torquing up of punishment.
And who's next in the punishment stakes?
Well, you never can know for sure, but BNP is in talks with Justice over their sanctions case. That could come in the next couple of weeks. We think maybe 2 weeks or a month. There's also several tax investigations opened up as part of a Swiss treaty that DOJ struck last year. 106 banks have signed up for that, and there are other cases related to that. And of course, there's still the LIBOR cases and the Forex cases. So we might see some of those continue to trickle out over the next 12 months.
Are they exclusively foreign banks, foreign-based banks?
Well, it's interesting because the banks that have had the tougher punishment have been foreign banks. And there's a bit of criticism that DOJ is facing on that front. During the press conference for Credit Suisse's charges, Eric Holder was asked that question, and he said it was not the case. If a domestic bank had had the same problems, they would go after them just as hard. I think the question for everyone now is, will we see that play out? Or will it just continue to be the foreign banks that are facing these bigger charges and investigations?